that, I mean, there's a lot of things that I want to talk to you about,
Yeah.
but maybe, the thing that I notice is when I have conversations with executives, founders who are not in what you might think of as native AI businesses versus founder CEOs like yourself who are in native AI businesses, I noticed there's a gulf, there's a gap that seems to be expanding.
Yeah.
And so sort of the aha is when you are doing an AI native company, the AI is a co-founder of the company. And when you're an existing company, you think AI is a bolt-on to the company. And that's a fundamentally different mindset. And so I'm just curious, maybe right off the top, Chris, what do you've been doing this a long time. What's different as a native AI CEO as opposed to a non-native executive in your prior life?
Yeah. It's fascinating to get yourself to that stage because I had to learn it, as you said. And well, look, everyone has to. I sort of envy being a young kid. I was listening to one of your podcasts and you were talking about your nephew and sort of he's going to enter the work world as an AI native guy, which is different than you or I and what we're sort of trying to navigate, which is how do we work with this co-founder that's not a person, by the way. And,
right, but that does the job of many people.
Yeah. Is the best co-founder you could ever have. In that one, it's sycophantic and, is all is trying to please you.
The AIs have been trained to tell us we're awesome, haven't they?
Yeah. So, and there's a lot of ways that it's an amazing co-founder, not just its PhD level brilliance across all subjects, but the biggest place I got to was if you try to project out what an AI first or what it should look like, I think you're doing it wrong. I'm curious too, as you've been going through it. I'll give an example. We had a customer and he said, well, first, his team was using our product to automate a process which they created like 18x leverage. And they were basically automating a financial process every month on hundreds of assets. He saw it and said, this is amazing. I've got to do this. And human nature was, I'm going to sit down and plan to plan. And I'd said, that's not how we do it. Just start. What are you trying to do? You're trying to automate this process. Just tell it. Here's what I want to do. Here's an example. Let's build some rules as we go. In his case, he was trying to take in invoices, read them, and sort of route them around the company. He's the CTO, and so he spent one Monday a month doing this every month. And in 2 hours, he had built this system that he hadn't planned at all that saved that entire time. He was blown away, absolutely blown away. And I sort of asked him, he said, well, Chris, I'm worried. I didn't plan it. I'm not sure it's all right. I'm like, did you watch what happened as we added a new invoice and we added, it said, oh, we don't have this field in here now. We have to go look for it. And it does it with you. But had he not started and overthought it, and that's what we're all fighting because we've been taught you have to plan it, measure twice, cut once. This is the opposite. Just start cutting. I said a lot, but you've been at the forefront of that. Does that resonate? Do you agree? Do you
1,000%. And here's the thing: like in software development, AI as a category has introduced a lot of new language, right?
Yeah.
To differentiate what happens in AI versus the prior compute paradigms. One of them, of course, is prompt engineer, the person who's working with the AI prompt.
Yeah.
And the other one, of course, is this idea of vibe coding. And what vibe coding is the ability to do exactly what you're saying, kind of jam back and forth in a much more conversational way with an AI to create software code. Well, here's the breakthrough. If you're a CEO, if you're a founder, or if you're an executive really of any kind, what you want to be doing with AI is, if you think about any important thing you're working on, think about the concept of vibe creating it with your AI. And to your point, I do this all the time. I'll sit down and I'll say, well, I'm working on this thing, or I have these ideas about this, that, and I'll give you an example of a newsletter I was working on this morning. So I've heard in multiple places that we're having a massive breakthrough in entrepreneurship in the United States of America. So I'm like, wow,
Amen.
this is something that's very exciting to a person like me. I started my first company at 18. Entrepreneurship is, I mean, it sounds maybe over the top for some, but entrepreneurship in a very real way saved my life. It was a way out, not a way up for me, like it is for many. Anyway, I love entrepreneurship. I love entrepreneurs, and I love hearing that people are getting together and creating new things of value for others. That's fundamentally what it's about. So anyway, I got excited about this, and so I started digging around in the data with the AIs, and I found out that we're having a massive breakthrough. As a matter of fact, I think it was in the month of February 2026. I'd have to double check, but fairly recently, over 430,000 new businesses were registered in the United States. And so we're having this massive entrepreneurial boom. So I got very excited about all this stuff. And I wanted to compare it to the growth in AI because, of course, AI is helping to spark some of this boom. According to the AI czar, David Sachs, a buddy of mine, 75% of GDP growth in the United States now is coming from AI. That's also very exciting, right? So anyway, I was thinking about these ideas. And so I sat down and I started banging away on them with AI. And I type a bunch of these ideas in as a prompt. And then it comes back with a whole bunch of stuff. And then I say, well, what about this? And what about that? And what about this? And then I was also curious, is this happening in other like countries to the United States? You know, our two direct neighbors, Canada and Mexico. Wouldn't it be wonderful if that was happening there? And then I thought about, the major European countries, whether it be the UK or France or Germany or what have you. And so anyway, these were my ideas. And I started sort of jamming on these ideas, vibe creating these ideas with the AI, just back and forth and back and forth. And as I was learning things, I was thinking, oh, that's interesting. Now, what about this and what about that? Anyway, after about 15 minutes of going back and forth, of jamming, of vibe creating with the AI, starting off with some questions to see if something I had heard was actually true, after about 6 or 8 passes back and forth, before you know it, I'm writing a new newsletter about the renaissance, the breakthrough, the super explosion we're having in new entrepreneurship and categories in the United States. And sadly, not only is this not happening in other countries, in many other countries like the UK, entrepreneurship is down 10% year over
Really?
year.
Interesting.
Anyway, my point is this. If you think about any idea that you're thinking about, you can start off by just having a little bit of a thought, maybe not even a completely formed thought. You can say, hey, I'm thinking about X. And then you start going back and forth and back and forth. And before you know it, you're creating something. And in this case, is something as simple as a newsletter, but that could be a new business process for your company, or that could be which new market category should we address, or which geography should we focus on next, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so you can start off, to your point, we were taught with computers that you had to be very precise. The opposite is now true.
That's exactly it. Well, and I'll add this, and this is where we currently face, I think, limitations with AI, is that it's very good for that individual AI relationship. What's not good for a company and where they fall apart is AIs working with humans, teams collaborating together. So I come up with an idea. Just as you said, I have this back and forth for this new category. How do I then crystallize that into the organization? And this isn't a commercial about us, but that's where I think the future is going, and what we're building towards is all the power of AI together, where you can mix multiple people, you and me can collaborate too. And agents are in there. And we don't necessarily know we're collaborating with an agent, a person, an AI. They're playing a role. I'm playing a role. You're playing a role. But we can also crystallize around processes like businesses run. It's a little bit easier when you're a solo entrepreneur because it's all in your head. But once you're a business and there's other people and you relying on them, it gets harder. It's just exponentially harder. Where I think your point's well taken. You don't need to be as accurate anymore.
Right.
But if you magnify all these actors not as accurate, it gets hard to manage. And so how do you do that? And so, I think that's one of the things I've learned as an AI first CEO is how do I allow the team the ability to collaborate? So if I'm having this thread and it's amazing, I want to bring them into it. So how do I do that? And that's what we've solved for that in our platform. I'm sure others have other ways of doing it, but I think that's the next foundation here is how do we seamlessly integrate humans and AIs in ways that we accomplish things we couldn't do before.
Well, and one of the ways to think about it is to flip things. So the way a lot of people think is, well, what should we be using AI for? And then they start to think about that. Well, maybe we could use it for this or for that or what have you. What we're finding is legendary AI first CEOs and executive teams are saying, if we're not using AI for fill in the blank, tell me why. That is to say, the default position is we use AI for everything.
Yeah.
And I'll give you an example. I was talking to a buddy of mine about this yesterday.
Yeah.
Why would you, if you're doing any kind of data number related analytics, why would you ever put that data in a spreadsheet today?
It confounds me that the word spreadsheet even being a thing is odd to me anymore. Why would I even look at it that way? I would, yeah. So I don't. Well, I couldn't answer that.
Right, and I would argue. So, and here's the other interesting thing. This is a side note, but I have multiple learning differences, including ADHD, dyslexia, and I have the dyslexia of math, which is called dyscalculia. And so math was over for me in grade 3. However, here's the crazy part. I have a detail-oriented mind and a mind that is very curious, that loves facts and data. And when the data is important to me, I remember the data. I was the CMO of 3 publicly traded companies. I've given more presentations to Wall Street investors than I'll ever remember. However, math was over in grade 3 for me. Now, with AI, all the ideas, all the thoughts, all the questions about looking at data and looking at weird data and trying to understand signal in unique and different ways, et cetera, I can do what a spreadsheet macro expert was required to do with a set of prompts.
Amazing.
And so, when I explain to CEOs, this is like going from a sword to a lightsaber. And once you have the lightsaber, you don't ever want the sword back. The sword's beautiful. Maybe we put it on the wall and appreciate it. But there's no way I would go back to running a company or writing a book or doing a podcast or the other day, maybe this is extreme. The other day it started to drizzle in our neighborhood, Chris. And my wife, Carrie, says to me, you've been to our home,
Yeah.
We have a nice outdoor sitting area in
I
our
love
garden.
it. It's one of my favorite places in the world. Yes.
You and me both, brother.
Yeah.
And she says, hey, could you run outside and put the cushions in? Because I think it's starting to rain. And sometimes it sprinkles around here and that's it.
Yeah.
So I fire up one of my favorite AIs and I say, it just started to sprinkle. Should I bring in the cushions? And it says, yeah, you should because blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, okay, honey, I'll go bring in the cushions.
Well, then you tell it next time, I want a heads up 15 minutes before it's going to rain. And I want you to remind me to go do it.
Right. I want an alert. And you can create an agent for this that says, when should I take in the cushions?
That's right. Never have the mold or whatever the issue is
Exactly.
That's exactly right.
That'll ruin your cushions.
Right. Never have to think again about it. Erase that from your memory. You just know that an alert's going to be there when you need it. Well,
and so for you as a CEO, what's it like running a company where the mindset of everybody in the company is we start everything with AI and we do everything with AI.
Yeah. Well, we have a rule, no blank sheets of paper. So if you show up to a meeting with no agenda, if you are caught, I don't want to say thinking, but caught starting with a blank page, and any thinking process should be starting with AI and saying, in our system, and saying, here's what I'm trying to accomplish. Fill out my sheet of paper, because that's a lot of work. There's a lot of cognitive load to get from nothing to something. And most of that's noise, really. There's usually 2 or 3 salient points and it's sort of fluff, but we never start with that blank sheet. And we're going to, then, as you said, jam back and forth with the AI until it's a place where you can engage the team with it. But at the end of the day, it's then anything you're doing, you start that way. If you plan on replicating it, you'd say, next time, do this for me. You sort of ask yourself, if I'm only doing this once, why am I doing it? But it's okay. You can be creative that way and sort of ask questions and then discard them. That's all right. But once it's something you keep, you say, hey, let's save this in the memory bank as something we're going to go through process again. And then at the end of the day, for me, there's a leverage number we have, and there's not a science to it, but it's 10x. That's what you need to create for yourself. And if you're not creating that, it doesn't work for us. And you can either create that, and the only way you can do it is with AI. So if you're not doing 10x what you used to, if you just do the math in an 8-hour day, that says that you would have had to accomplish 80 hours of work in that day. Kind of the old way of thinking, which I'll have guys tell me they have 200 agents working for them at any given point in time, just off doing stuff. And they're managing now these teams that are incredibly powerful, and it's hard. It's different. And it's a mind shift for people too, because it's so innate to have information be power. You're good at your job. You're good at writing code. You're good at, thinking of just the right word to put on the PowerPoint. That's what you're good at. And now you're relinquishing that and giving it to something else and saying, here's how you do what I do it at scale. And also let anyone else in the company be able to tap in on demand into that skill. So you're teaching AI skills and letting others leverage that. And we create virtuous cycles of leverage this way. So it's easy to say, it's harder to do though, right? How do you actually if I just say, do this, people don't naturally just say, oh yeah, you're right. I'm going to make it so. So it's been a journey.
There is something interesting about that, right?
Yeah.
Which is, if the thing you're saying, just make it so, isn't, let's just call it an automatable thing, automatable execution, right? Because what gets automated? The things that get automated are executions, things that need to get done, which is just execution, just a fancy way of saying that.
Yep.
That happened on a repeatable basis in a certain set of conditions. So every time it looks like it's going to rain more than a quarter inch, send me a text that says you got to take in the pillows. Because of my ADHD, it's not unusual for me to be late, even though I try real hard not to be.
Yeah.
And so, my partner in Category Pirates, Eddie Yoon, his son, who's a teenager, created an agent that monitors my my schedule and sends me a text 15 minutes before every meeting.
It says, hey, I'm here to help.
Yeah, and it actually is improving my batting average in this regard. And so that's on the trivial side. And then on the much more powerful side, a customer can be asking a digital agent a question about product availability, pricing, et cetera, technical specs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and have all of those things answered immediately, such that they would be in a position to buy when they would have to wait for a person to answer those questions until they decided to buy. And so if an agent can answer customers' questions to either solve a problem or help them make a purchase decision in the exact moment of the experience the customer is having with the question, with the problem, with the product. Well, it's a material accelerator on the speed that business can move.
Yeah. Well, I love the example you gave. It doesn't, how much has that added, even that simple example with time or the cushions or, you're shifting your mindset, and you were already there, you know this, but the simple things can become a pattern and I think some of those create the light bulb moments where you say, I didn't think of it this way. I didn't think that I could bring this technology to help me in such a way. And then you just start seeing it over and over and over again. And it becomes natural where it's, I liked your example before, the legendary CEOs say, we're going to use AI for everything. I'm not going to tell you how, I'm not going to say what to do. That's at the nature of what the core of the business now. And those who can figure it out, you're going to crush it. And those who can't, we're here to help you. We'll work with you. We're going to make the tools available. And it's your job then to kind of figure out how to work with them as a individual. And maybe it's some of these simple things you start with that.
Of course.
Yeah.
And if you do, depending on what survey results you want to look at, but roughly in the high 40s is what I've seen of Americans who have a negative perception of AI.
Really?
It's terrifying.
Yeah. That's really a shame.
Because the media gets an F.
Yeah.
The leaders of the AI industry get an F. The government and politicians get an F.
Yep.
And certainly S&P 500 CEOs who are firing people and using AI as air cover get an F. All these different groups have focused on the negatives of AI. And look, neither you or I are stupid or silly, right? Do we need good governance? Absolutely. Do we need transparency? Absolutely. Do we need oversight? Absolutely. And here's the thing most people don't realize, Chris. Technology never, ever took one person's job. All technology ever does is move where the value is, right? So when the wheel gets invented, and it takes 300 years for them to figure out maybe not spin it this way for pottery, but spin it this way for transportation, all of a sudden we can move things that we heretofore couldn't move. For example, water. Well, there's only so much water the average person can carry for, a certain amount of space. Well, the minute you have wheels and you can have a contraption and create a wheelbarrow, or a bridge, or et cetera, you can move water more effectively, right? And anything else. Well, so now the amount of people that you need to move the water does change. But what actually changed is where the value is. There's less value in humans moving water when less humans can move more water. And so what's the more valuable things the humans who used to move the water can now do? Well, maybe they can plant things, or maybe they can build things, et cetera, et cetera. And so what's happening here is AI is making the value of existing knowledge closer to free every day. And with agents that can execute all these mundane tasks, be they very small ones, or be they integrated business processes that go across multiple supply chains, execution is getting closer and closer to free with agents. And so we're living in a world where if roughly 70% of what the average knowledge worker does is apply existing knowledge to execute in an existing system or process to produce a well-known existing result. If that's roughly 70% of what the average knowledge worker does, well, guess what? AI can do most of that. So what does that mean? Where's the real value now? Well, the real value now is in judgment, is in strategy, is in setting direction. What are the problems or opportunities worth solving, worth pursuing? Is in taste. What should we focus on? What shouldn't we focus on? What new things of value can we create for others, et cetera? And so the other part of what's going on is if you're an executive and you want to be an AI first executive, the aha is, wow, I'm able to create things and execute on those creations, if I could put it that way, at scale in a way that was never possible for me or our team before. What happens when I can do that?
Yeah. I had this, I think, underscores the point better than anything I had ever seen. We have a customer, CEO, of a very successful jeans company called Mugsy. And they were, Black Friday is a big, obviously, day for them. Something like 40% of the revenue comes from that sort of November and December window. But he was noticing on that day a alarming trend in that they had the same number of visitors on their website, but something like half the conversions. I'm making this up, but this is roughly accurate. Or I'm not making up the story, but the exact numbers. Um, yeah, you'll appreciate it with the sort of dyslexia. You know, it's directionally accurate. We'll let the AI figure it out. But so he was noticing this trend and he was terrified and he jumped in our system, which is connected to all of his other systems, Shopify and the email marketing and all the other places. Jumped in and said, I have this intuition, but I got to have you validate it because you're really good at crunching numbers and you can run a bunch of scenarios. But I've been in this business for 15 years. I have a couple things I think we can try, but I'm going to need you to help me vet this. So this pairing of human with this intuition, ability to see around corners, he's obviously built this business, and this machine, which could go run infinitely large kind of samples and tests based on what he asked it. They landed on a new strategy. They took 40% off the flagship pair of jeans, massive success. He was terrified. System got him comfortable that it was the right strategy. If you take 40% off your flagship and people, that's all they buy, you've basically sold your best product at no margin. So he's terrified about this outcome. AI got him comfortable, and it turned out they had something like a $6 higher AOV and like a half an item more per order. And this instant pairing of human meets machine, it was incredible to see. And to me, that epitomized this AI first world where you have the superpower now right at your fingertips. But the machine wouldn't have done that on its own. I don't believe it. I really don't. I think it needed his intuition, his creativity, his history. There's just stuff it couldn't have known. And there's some conditions on the ground that he probably knew to even think about that he couldn't even describe, but he was naturally processing in his brain, and then he was able to work with this.
And so what do you think, Chris, is the big leap? If I'm, the CEO of a growing company, a mid-sized company, and let's say I'm not an AI first CEO entrepreneur. I've been doing this for a little bit, a while.
Yeah.
But I'm not a dummy, and I'm looking at all this stuff, and we're experimenting, and we're doing things like most people are. But I listen to Chris Happ, and I think, yeah, I really want to be an AI first CEO. And this idea of we should think about using AI for everything and start with AI. How do I begin to do that in my company like you do it in yours?
I think you just got to start, but I think you have to. It took me a little bit for the light bulb to go off. And once it did, it just popped. And I think I remember you and me talking about this, where once you just can't unsee it, or you just, use whatever metaphor you want to use. It just, an aha moment hit, and you got to get yourself there. I was talking with a CEO who puts a sticky note on his laptop up in the corner and says, remember, use AI. Kind of that blank page thing. Don't ever, just start there. And then you start asking yourself, why am I doing any of these tasks? Like you said, 70% of what you maybe do in a day or what we do as a business is easily repeatable. There's no special knowledge in it. And so why am I doing it? And I'm spending my time, and I don't enjoy those things. So as you get there as a person, then you say, I want to craft an experience where every one of my employees gets that. And I'm creating an environment where they get to do that and give them the space to sort of figure that out. And then they're starting to create leverage. And then it extends to, well, how do I share this with my customers? So we have a saying that we're working on is we're just trying to create awe every day in AI, where someone, they're on a call with somebody and they make a suggestion. Meanwhile, an agent's working on that in the background. And by the end of the call, I said, that was a great idea. It's now in the product. When they see stuff like that, you're like, that's what an AI first company operates like. Like, just like this, we make decisions, we get things done, because once you've made the decision to write the code because it was a good idea, that's commoditized. That should happen instantly. And when you can show people that, it's pretty powerful.
Absolutely. I was thinking about the first jam session we had with your executive team.
Yeah.
And I was in a similar jam session just last week. And I'm in the discussion with you guys or with these other folks, this other company last week. And in the meeting, I have my laptop open and I'm taking notes and I'm putting my notes directly into a custom AI and directly into a thread in that custom AI. So that custom AI knows everything that we category pirates know about category design, creator capitalist, marketing, creating new markets, super consumers, all the good stuff. And then I create a special folder for the company that I'm working on. And all I say to it at the beginning is, I'm in a meeting with this company in this category. They do roughly these kinds of things. Here's who's in the meeting. And right now, all I want to do is take notes. And I just bang that in. And over a period of a couple days, your note taking turns into a strategy document, a business document, in my case, a category design, which can then get turned into a marketing plan, a lightning strike plan, a product plan, a hiring plan, etc. And then you can create agents to help you go execute that product plan, that marketing plan, that lightning strike plan. And so from the very beginning of, hey, we're just going to have a discussion about whether it's the quarter, whether it's about planning for the year, whether it's about our category design strategy, whatever the meeting is about, we start with a note taker. And over a period of days and weeks, we're actually we're building plans, we're building executions, we're building strategies, we're building briefing documents, PowerPoint presentations, website, like all of it that started a week or two ago by just using it as an intelligent note taker.
Yeah. Are you finding, as you're doing that, do you find that it rubs off on others? Like, how are you finding it? I mean, because you're such at the cutting edge of this. I think I'm there too, but I'm always curious how we pull people along. And I think I've found ways in our company, but what have you found ways that you show them? What are other ways that you're pulling people along?
Yeah, it's interesting. So when I tell people this is what I'm doing, and I'm not sitting there looking at, the new NFL draft or whatever that, or the next UFC fight or whatever else might be capturing my imagination. They're like, well, what do you mean? So you're note taking with it? And I said, yeah, but the note taking is the start point to building something legendary.
Yeah.
And as I'm going back and forth, and here's the aha, the AI isn't just taking the notes, it's becoming a thought partner, right? And sometimes I'll say, I don't want to think about that right now. I just want to keep on this topic and great, or park that for later, or what have you. Or in the case of what I was doing last week, I was doing two things. I was building their new category design strategy in real time, and B, giving a report, a synthesis report of what I heard on the operations of the company for the CEO and the executive team. So I was actually creating two things simultaneously: a strategy category design document and a set of recommendations on some of the operational problems, challenges, and opportunities that I heard in the meeting.
Yeah.
And so your ability to scale yourself and others, and here's the other thing that happens. Other people say, oh, that's what you're doing? Can I give you my notes to plug into your AI? And I say, yes, very much so.
Yeah.
And then here's the other thing to bring people along. And I think we did this when we did this kind of session for you and your team. And I learned this only in the last year or two, or a year and a half, maybe. Most people don't know how to prompt. They prompt like they're typing in a search.
Yeah. Yes.
It's not a search. Like we talked about earlier, it doesn't have to be precise. And so, and then the other thing is, you know those times in a meeting where you have an idea?
Yeah.
Oh my God, I got to write this down. Somebody
Yeah.
just said something to spark me.
Right.
And I write
can't
that
interrupt,
down.
but I gotta. Yeah.
Put that in the AI. And so, and then maybe connect a dot. Maybe somebody said something that you hadn't thought about, but connects a dot in your mind to something else. You can literally say to the AI, hey, so-and-so just said such and such, dun, 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 dun. And it made me think a little bit differently about this other topic. Dun, 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 dun. Is there a connection there? Is there whatever it is? And so my point is, as you're working with AI, even note-taking, what you're really doing is you're jamming on what you could think of as obvious and non-obvious ideas and approaches.
Interesting.
And you don't have to develop them to completion in the meeting. All we're doing is capturing them so we can use them later. You know, that's the other thing that people don't realize. We don't know what a good idea is when we hear it, especially if it comes from us. And so our ability to capture that stuff in the moment and look for patterns, look for non-obvious connections, AI can help us do that over time. And so what starts off as a meeting to talk about our strategy or our what we should do to improve operationally, or what the plan should be for the next 2 quarters as we complete this quarter, whatever it is, you can be building the solution to whatever that conversation is just by starting with note-taking and looking for non-obvious connections and teaching the AI to think in that kind of proactive, non-obvious way.
Yeah. What you said just prompted me to. I've noticed people are intimidated almost by the prompt bar, like there's some, and it is magical, but like what I put in there is somehow going to be judged. We've actually found we've flipped prompting on its head. Now, when you come in our system, the AI reaches out to you and says, "Hey, here's what I think you're here for today. Here's what I've seen," but it sort of engages you just like a person would, a warm, I think it's very much that, "Hey, Chris, it's 2:00. Here's probably why you're here. You want to talk about this, or is there something else?" But trying to eliminate that sort of intimidation factor of what do I put in here? Is there a right way or a wrong way? But you sort of like break down the walls. It was interesting to me to watch that sort of simple flipping of the script and the response that we got. Just made me think about it as you're talking about sort of note taking and how do you get started and how do you explain to people what you're doing with it? Where there's not a right answer. It's just a dialogue, and some of it's throwaway. Could just be, hey, what do? We start a meeting. We talk about the weather. It's a bonding experience of sorts. It's a useless waste of time in any other format other than, well, it gets people talking, right? And so some of it is necessary.
Right. I think this is a good place. Start by just treating it like a thought partner.
Yeah.
The co-founder of your career, note-taking, and ultimately move up to vibe creating, where we're using AI to help us do and build new things.
Yeah. Love it.
All right, Chris Happ. This has been a lot of fun.
Great talking to you as always. Family's good. Life's good.
Family's really good. Chickens are good. Making eggs. I always tell people chickens are great pets, every bit as good as a dog or a cat, and they make breakfast.
I had a blast when we were out. I can see why you can just be creative in a way that others can't, because you have such a space and such a family, and I include the chickens in it. They add to it.
Thank you, Chris. I can't wait for our next episode.
Let's do it.